Today's journey tells the story of Banksville Road, a major player in the transportation needs of Pittsburgh's South Hills, but it's also the story of how things might have been and how fixing one thing upstream, despite all the good intentions, sometimes only creates problems farther downstream. Now, many of you might be familiar with this view of going to Banksville Road and the Parkway West from Sawmill Run Boulevard and Woodville Avenue out of the West End. But in 1908, it was just a insignificant little dirt road that ran beside Little Sawmill Run Creek and the railroad that was named after the creek, or crick, as they call them in Pittsburgh. It eventually wound its way out of the city boundaries to an only slightly better road that was improved in 1905 in what was then Union Township. Union Township was formed out of what was Chartiers Township after a vote on September 9th, 1860. And interestingly enough, the name of the township was originally Kirkpatrick. But the impropriety of so long a name with so small a township was noted in the court, and on February of 1866, the name was changed to Union. Union Township was typical of most small towns in western Pennsylvania, with coal mines, farmland, a store, and a school to educate the children. But in 1916, the city advertised to improve its small stretch of road, which would benefit Banksville, Dormont, and other outlying sections who would enter the city in about half the time, they say. But by 1927, the residents of Union Township voted to join the city of Pittsburgh. While the city was busy improving its little stretch of Banksville Road, other South Hills roads were being improved, notably West Liberty Avenue, which led to the Liberty Tunnels, which opened in 1924 and opened up the South Hills to easy access to the city of Pittsburgh. Sawmill Run Boulevard was also improved, but ended at Woodruff Street, which was not really a street per se at the time, but simply supplied streetcar access to Mount Washington. But the incredible congestion on West Liberty Avenue and on both sides of the Liberty Tubes just up Sawmill Run Boulevard led South Hills residents to plead for a solution, a number of which were considered. One was something that had been planned but postponed at the same time the Liberty Tubes were planned in the early 1900s. A tunnel under Duquesne Heights, along with a new bridge alongside the Point Bridge. Another interesting discussion going on among the powers that be was the push to put a toll plaza outside the Liberty tunnels and charge people to use them. The thought was that this would help pay for new construction elsewhere. When the city unveiled plans to improve Woodruff Street from Mount Washington to Sawmill Run Boulevard, there were even complaints that to do that would only give people a way around the toll at the tubes. But the first step was to extend Sawmill Run Boulevard to connect with Banksville Road. Part of the problem was that it was the residents of the suburbs who would benefit the most from that project. But finally, the county agreed to foot the bill. And in addition, they built this large traffic circle at the end of Banksville Road that connected it to Sawmill Run Boulevard on the right and Woodville Avenue on the left. That's Woodville Avenue leading to the traffic circle. But that led to a whole new set of problems. The population of the South Hills communities was exploding, and Banksville Road wasn't built to handle the influx of suburbanites trying to avoid West Liberty Avenue and the Liberty Tubes. Residents clamored for something to be done. Banksville Road was just too narrow and twisty to be used. It was even discovered that plans from years before had been set aside. So they continued to press, and finally, 3 years later, plans were approved. Now it appears that they built the new road on Little Sawmill Run Railroad's right-of-way, and the original Banksville Road still exists alongside much of the 4-lane road. Many of you might recognize this intersection at Crane Avenue. The intersection at Potomac. The historic Dormont Pool, still in use today, wasn't even 10 years old when this picture was taken. But it wasn't long before Banksville Road became the busy commercial suburban thoroughfare that we know today. So now you'd think everyone would be happy, right? Wrong. Now you have 4-lane Sawmill Run and 4-lane Banksville Road coming together at the Banksville traffic circle with nowhere to go to avoid the Liberty Tunnel and bridge traffic except through the narrow West End route to the West End Circle, the Point Bridge, and the West End Bridge on the north side. So the clamor grew and grew all through the 30s until finally, 10 years later, dirt began to fly on the West End bypass. Dirt, by the way, which ultimately ended up filling up a dump in Langley Field where Greenway Middle School now sits. And though they promised to have it open by September of '49, it didn't open fully until almost 2 years later in August of 1951. But the celebration was short-lived because 6 months later, they closed it again to get rid of the circle, complete the new Parkway West Cloverleaf, and begin work on the new Fort Pitt tunnels. At the east end of the old Banksville Circle, now Parkway West Banksville Interchange, a 250-foot hill was removed and the dirt and rocks were carried to fill in the valley below the Green Tree Interchange, now what we call Green Tree Hill. The cutout in this picture on the far top left corner was the hill that they removed. But after continued postponements, it would be 2 years until the West End bypass was fully opened again. In the meantime, 2 more controversies threatened to postpone the opening of the Fort Pitt tunnels. If you can even imagine, recommendations were being made to charge a toll at the new Fort Pitt tunnels. In addition, the Pittsburgh Railways Company asked the State Superior Court to halt construction of the Fort Pitt Bridge as they appealed a Public Utilities Commission ban of streetcar tracks on the new bridge. But fortunately for the public, neither of these proposals came to fruition, and the tunnels and bridge finally opened with great fanfare on September 1st, 1960, becoming one of the greatest entrances to any city in the world. But it was a long time coming.